Hi, I'm Emily from the Wisconsin Cheese Mart, and today we're going to be talking about cheddar. So if you didn't know, cheddar actually originated in England, specifically in a cave, Cheddar Gorge, which is in Somerset County in England. And you probably recognize it mostly because cheddar is the most recognizable cheese in the world. You've seen it in supermarkets, you've seen it at fancy restaurants, you've seen it in your refrigerator. You've seen this cheese before. There are also a bunch of different styles of cheddars. For example, traditional English style cheddar will taste much differently than a Vermont style cheddar or a Wisconsin style cheddar. So as you can tell, we have a lot of different ages, not only ages, but also colors. You usually see these two main colors. The white will not have annatto, which is used to color all of the yellow colored cheddars you see before you. So annatto is actually a spice, which isn't spicy. It comes from South American trees, and it adds a nice red tint to a white cheese, making it orange. At WisconsinCheeseMart.com, we actually have everything from this 1 year white cheddar half loaf denoting its size, it's half of a loaf, all the way up to this 1/4 pound piece of 23-year cheddar. This thing is absolutely insane. It is almost as old as I am, which is crazy, but it's also been aging for that long, so it's been developing all the crystals that all of these other cheese have, but in a much more concentrated package. So you can tell right off the bat that this 23-year-old cheddar has been aging for a long time due to this abundance of calcium lactate crystals. So these crystals are formed by the calcium in the cheese that is binding with the lactic acid in the cheese as well, forming calcium lactate. The crystals have a bit of texture. They also have a bit of color. They shouldn't be mistaken with mold though. These are actually really delicious characteristics of a well-aged cheese. They actually used to be considered something to exclude from cheeses until rather recently, when judges and cheesemakers started to including them and thinking they were actually really nice characteristics of an aged cheddar. So as far as the more approachable styles of cheddar, we have 1 year here, but I'll talk about this 2 year here. So this will be an orange, yellow, technically 2 year cheddar. You'll see it's nice and uniform in color. That's because it hasn't gone through that aging process that all of these other cheeses that will form those crystals has. It will also be uniform in texture because it lacks those crystals. So it will actually be almost close to a semi-soft cheese. As it ages, it becomes more firm. So this will be a little bit past semi-soft, almost into semi-firm territory. It will also have a really creamy texture. Once you bite into it, it will actually melt in your mouth. It's a nice, young, really well-balanced cheese. Really fantastic for any kind of application that you would like to use it for. You can really use it for casseroles, mac and cheeses, grilled cheeses, anything that you use a standard cheese, cheddar cheese for. Actually, this one will be very all-purpose in that respect. It's also just a really well-rounded, well-balanced, good cheese, so if you do want to add it to a cheese board, you cannot go wrong. So the next cheddar we'll cover will actually be a 5 year cheddar, also the yellow cheddar. This one will be aged for a few more years than that 2 year was, and it will have started to form the calcium lactate crystals that I was talking about. You can see it on the exterior. And I know those are calcium lactate crystals versus tyrosine crystals because they are on the exterior of the cheese. Tyrosine crystals only exist in the interior paste of cheeses like Goudas, Parmesans, and even sometimes aged cheddars, but we know that those specifically are calcium lactates. So since this cheese has been aging for a little bit longer than that 2 year cheddar, it will have developed a little bit more of that acidity, a little bit more of that tanginess that aged cheddars and other aged cheeses do develop over time. And it will also have changed in texture. It will be more semi-firm than the younger version due to the fact that when the lactic acid is binding with the calcium, moisture actually leaves the cheese. So it does become more firm and less moist and soft. When you get to this stage of aged cheddars as well, it will crumble under a knife or under any pressure by your fingers. The younger cheeses will not. Those will be a little bit easier to take a knife to. This one will crumble into those nice little crumbs. So that's how I would recommend presenting it on a cheese board if you are using it for that. Otherwise, due to its savory nature and the fact that it has developed those crystals, it does have a little bit more crunch than the milder, younger version. So this cheese I would really just recommend snacking on or using on a cheese board or something like that. However, you can use it to cook. It will just punch up that flavor a little bit more. So if you're not into something that's a little bit more sharp and a little bit more tangy in those recipes, I would probably stick with a younger cheddar. Lastly, we'll cover this 12-year cheddar. So this is a white cheddar, meaning it lacks the annatto seasoning that the yellows have. And since it has been aged more than double the age of the 5-year, it will have firmed up as well. It will have lost moisture, and now it's actually into the semi-firm, firm category, being close to Parmigiano Reggiano, but it won't grate as well as Parmesan does because, as you can tell, it's very crumbly. When we go to cut this cheese, it just kind of breaks under pressure because it is so aged and there is much less moisture in that paste of the cheese. You can tell it's kind of an odd shape because as we go to cut the cheeses, they're not staying in nice uniform squares or rectangles as the 2-year might. So when you go to eat this cheese, the sides of your mouth are gonna pull into your tongue because it is very sharp. It is very tangy. You'll start to salivate a little bit. It is just very, very flavorful. If you like, more acidic style cheeses or sharp style cheeses, this is really crazy, but also very good if you're into aged cheddars. However, I would not cook with this cheese. It is really fantastic, and you can if you'd like, especially if you really like sharp flavors in your food. However, I think this is just such a good cheese. I would really just crumble it up, put it on a plate, and drink a really nice glass of wine or a really full-bodied beer with this because it is just too good to muddle up with some, potatoes or some macaroni noodles. You really have to let this cheese shine for all that it is. The same as you get older, like with a 23-year, you just got to sit down and enjoy that like a fine wine. It's a fine cheese. I hope you've enjoyed this mini lesson on our cheddar cheeses here. Please let me know down below what age of cheese is your favorite, if you've ever had a cheese older than you. I've actually tasted a 40-year cheddar before. It was like licking a battery, I like to say. But if you've had any of these more approachable cheeses, 2 years, what kinds you'd like to cook with, and if you've bought any of these cheeses specifically from WisconsinCheeseMart.com, please leave a review on that item page. You can let other people know how you liked it, how you cooked with it, and you can review the cheese and let other shoppers know if that might be the one they're looking for. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.